Well, I'd like you to then discuss with the jury the concept of neck restraints. And if we could publish it, page 52 of the exhibit. And looking at the time period that you were doing this training, neck restraints were authorized by MPD policy, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you please describe the training that you provided to Minneapolis police officer regarding the use of neck restraints?
Yes, sir. We'd go over the techniques, definitions of neck restraints, and we'd go through different reps of the neck restraint to get the officers comfortable in doing it.
Could you just give the jury an overview of what a neck restraint is?
Yes, sir. So neck restraint is constricting the sides of a person's neck, and they refer to it as a vascular neck restraint. So you're slowing the blood flow to and from the brain with the intent to gain control of a subject.
And there are two different types of neck restraints in the MPD policy. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And those are what?
The two levels are conscious neck restraint. So that means you've wrapped somebody up and they're still conscious. And you can gain compliance with many people with that. And then there's unconscious, and that's applying pressure until the person, when they're not complying, you put enough pressure that they become unconscious and then therefore comply.
How does one actually apply a neck restraint?
We teach a couple of different techniques, but the basic idea is you use your elbow as a landmark and you place your arm across. So your bicep would be on one side of the neck and your arm would be on the forearm on the other side of the neck. And then there's a couple of different hand placements, but then you apply pressure with head pressure on both sides of the neck to gain compliance.
And you were demonstrating you were using your arm to do that.
That's correct.
And it'll also be done with a leg.
It can be done with the leg.
Does MPD train on how to do it with a leg?
We may show the younger officers in the academy what that looks like, but we don't train leg neck restraints with the officers in service. And as far as my knowledge, we never have.
How would a trained neck restraint work? I'm sorry, how would a trained leg neck restraint work?
People that watch MMA, so professional fighters, they call it a triangle choke, and I use that term choke loosely. That's just what it's called. But that's when you place your leg over somebody's back, across their side of their neck, and then you trap their arm in, so the person ends up having one arm in, and their arm causes pressure on one side, and the leg causes pressure on the second, and you can actually render somebody unconscious if you hold that long enough.
What part of the leg?
Usually it's the inner thigh.
Inner thigh. So in this scenario, using a leg to do a neck restraint, would the knee sort of replace the elbow in terms of placement? Or how would you describe it?
I would say the knee doesn't really replace the elbow. Your thigh would be across the side of somebody's neck, your leg across their back, and you protect the airway really with the space that's created with their arm being pinned in there.
If you could please display the next page, page 53. Use of neck restraints. Can you describe, in using those concepts of proportionality, when it's authorized to use a neck restraint of the two different varieties?
Yes, sir. On subjects who are actively aggressive, which means assaultive, they're actively resisting and other techniques haven't worked, you can use it then. And then on the bottom it says no, that you can't use it against subjects who are passively resistant.
And if you could go to the next slide, page 54. And after a neck restraint is applied, there are certain guidelines that you train that have to be followed. Is that right?
That's correct.
For the care of the individual upon whom the neck restraint was applied.
Yes, sir.
And if we could publish Exhibit 110 again, and bringing this specific topic back to the concept of proportionality. Could you enlarge this, please? Do you have one of those stylus up there?
Oh, I guess I do.
You can touch the screen and make a mark here. Unconscious neck restraint. An unconscious neck restraint is when the person would actually be rendered unconscious, correct?
That's correct.
And intentionally so.
Yes, sir.
Could you please underline unconscious neck restraint as you see it in this response and control guide?
Yes, sir.
And what subject activity, what level of subject activity would be required to use an unconscious neck restraint?
Well, according to this chart, it's in the red area, so it would be active aggression.
Okay. And do you agree with that?
Yeah. I think in the last slide we talked about active resistance if other techniques didn't work, but definitely in active aggression is where it's placed.
If we look then, you can also find a conscious neck restraint, and that's the neck restraint that's used for the purpose of control, correct?
Correct.
Could you underline where that is in this force continuum, Exhibit 110? And so the conscious neck restraint is authorized in circumstances where there's, in fact, active resistance. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then if there was something like passive resistance, right, neither the conscious neck restraint nor the unconscious neck restraint would be authorized. Is that right?
Would not be authorized?
Would not be authorized.
That is correct.
And an unconscious neck restraint would not even be authorized for some forms of active resistance, would it?
That's correct.
And if the subject is offering no resistance, obviously, then no neck restraint would be authorized.
That's correct.
Or any restraint. Would it? Or any restraint, if there's no...
Yeah, generally, no.
Okay. In addition to the classroom training, you actually teach officers, show them physically how to do these sort of neck restraints?
Yes, sir.
At this time, I'd like to republish Exhibit 17. Sir, is this an MPD trained neck restraint?
No, sir.
Has it ever been?
Not to my neck restraint? No, sir.
Is this a MPD authorized restraint technique?
Knee on the neck would be something that does happen in use of force that isn't unauthorized.
And under what circumstances would that be authorized? How long can you do that?
I don't know if there's a time frame. It would depend on the circumstance of the time.
Which would include what?
The type of resistance you're getting from the subject that you're putting the knee on.
And so if there was, say for example, the subject was under control and handcuffed, would this be authorized?
I would say no.
If you could take that down, please.